What's up, YouTube? Before the video gets started, I want to talk about the fact that I just talked to one of the newest signees to MLW, Major League Wrestling. If you guys aren't watching the show already, you guys need to. It's called MLW Fusion. But Malcolm, where can we watch it? I'm gonna tell you. On the Fubo Sports Network and on their YouTube channel, you can watch it on Wednesday at 7 p.m. EST. On Saturdays at 10 p.m. It's also on BeIN Sports. And you can watch it 24/7 on DAZN. The point is, if you're not watching MLW, you just should. What? Why aren't you? Dude, what? He's really not watching. Yo, he's tripping. Make sure you watch MLW. Make sure you watch the whole interview with Tankman. Heavyweight Hustle. It's a good one. Subscribe. What's up, YouTube? Right now, I'm here with someone special. And usually, I always say we have big guests. We have special guests on the channel. But when I say big, I literally mean big. This is a big dude. He makes most refrigerators look like Hornswoggle. This is the newest signee, one of the newest signees to MLW. He calls himself Heavyweight Hustle, and we can tell. This is Calvin Tankman.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. How was it first getting signed to MLW? I mean, like, you now recently have debuted. You've been up there on a week-to-week basis somewhat. So how's it been to actually see yourself on YouTube and on television on a pretty weekly basis?
It's wild. It almost doesn't feel real. Like, you know what I mean? Because, like, you have this, like, expectation of what this is going to be like and what this is going to feel like. I don't know. Like, when you're a kid, you're like, man, if I could just make it on TV, then, like, I'll be happy. And now it's like, all right, I made it on TV. What's next? Like, I got to keep going. I got to, like, now I want to be the top guy on TV. And now I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to, you know what I mean? So it's like, now it's just like, whereas a kid, you think like, okay, I'm going to make it on TV and I'll be set and I'll be happy. As an adult, I get there and I'm like, okay, now that I know I can do this, let's try and push it to the next level. You know what I mean? So it just like fuels that hunger. Now that I see that, now that my daughter gets to see that, you know what I mean? She gets excited, makes me excited. It's like, all right, let's see how far I can take it.
I was going to ask that, since you're a father, what was the reaction from like your family and other friends of when you like debuted on MLW?
Really, like, hometown was crazy. Like, to be honest, like a lot of like friends and stuff finally started to see the hard work pay off, because it's like one of those things where, like, you know, when you chasing wrestling, you're going to be gone a lot, especially when you're starting out. You ain't going to be making no money. You know, me going just to show, hey, I'm worth putting your money in. I'm worth investing in. Yeah. Hey, I can bring something to your show. So like 5 years of doing that, and they hardly see me, and like they hear me talk about, oh, how's wrestling going in small talk, stuff like that. But like now that it's like they can see it, like it's like they can turn on their TV and look at it. They're just like, oh, okay, like we get it. Like before, it was like, oh, he just does that wrestling thing. Now it's like, oh, okay,
he's big time now.
Yeah.
When I actually first found out about you, my friend actually sent me one of your matches against MJF. So I was looking up like other matches of yours. I'm like, oh, this guy, he moves really well. And I'm like, he definitely got to get signed somewhere eventually. Then 2 days later, announced that you actually signed to MLW. I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. So what was the process of you getting actually signed to MLW? Like, who reached out to you?
I believe it was MSL that reached out to me initially. And it was kind of out of nowhere. You know, I'd sent them some stuff before, but like, you know, with big companies like that, every wrestler in the country is sending them stuff. So like your video could get lost in the shuffle, and they just like, it's a matter of like the right person seeing you at the right time and stuff like that. It was just one of those things. They stumbled across my video. They'd asked for like suggestions on who people thought would be ready that they could reload their roster with, because they're planning to bring in new fresh faces. And I guess somebody brought me up and they saw my video. They ended up hitting me up and just asking if I'd be interested, if I'd heard of the company, you know what I mean? And just went from there. And like really like the thing that like got me was that like you said that like you'd seen what I've done for a while, and you're kind of like, man, how does nobody know who this guy is? It's one of those things where it's like, you get so many people that are like, maybe. And then like, I mean, it's a business, you know what I mean? They got to invest money and time and effort into you. So like when Court and everybody over at MLW came to me and said, listen, like, there's no maybe. We see what you are, we see what you can be, and we want to invest and help you grow and turn you into what we think you can be.
So growing up, were you always a wrestling fan? And like, who were you into growing up? Like, what was your favorite wrestler?
So I started watching wrestling probably around the age of 3. My older cousin Travis, he was in high school at the time, but like my dad was less than 10 years older than him. And like my dad, when he was dating my mom, would always come by my grandparents' house, and my cousin would always be there. So like he'd watch like rent movies and watch movies with him. So they were always close. So he'd come visit my dad, and like he'd always end up with me all day. And so he was a huge wrestling fan. So he turned on wrestling, and like we just started watching WCW back in the day. The first like 3 people I can think of off the top of my head that I was huge fans of were Rey Mysterio, we'll say Goldberg, and Sting, definitely. Because they all had like a presence. Well, Rey Mysterio just did athletic things that I'd never seen. Billy Kidman, too. I was a huge fan of as a kid. Because that just didn't make sense to me when I'm like 4 years old watching them do it. I'm like, huh? So
since you're a big fan of like Goldberg and Rey Mysterio, would you say you used their like wrestling styles and kind of combined it into your own?
Them and like everybody else. So like, cause like I talk a lot about like Vader and like Samoa Joe and Bam Bam. I watch a lot of them. But then yeah, like you a Rey Mysterio or another one, my first like independent like wrestler that I was like, this is the guy, and like did everything because couldn't like watch in the DVDs. My parents were buying those, so like I had to like just find clips on YouTube. But Ruckus, who he was on the Backyard Wrestling video game, so that's how I found out about it. And I was like, oh, this dude's real. And then like I was seeing like, you know how like some of the moves in that game they throw you 12 feet in the air and boom and move, and it's like, oh, it's animated, but like they don't actually do that. But all the flips that Ruckus did in the game, he for real did. Yeah. So like I was watching this highlight video and I was like, just blew my mind at like 12 years old. I just started like Googling him. There's a lot of things like little stuff. Even the running shooting star press, I would probably never do that if it wasn't for like Ruckus tapes. And I was,
were you also like a backyard wrestler since like you were watching like the video game stuff? Did you actually try to do any type of backyard wrestling as well?
Not seriously, but like before the age of 12, yeah, I was like signing kids in the neighborhood to contracts. I thought little Vince, little Court. I thought I was like CEO of the company, you know what I mean?
Did you have like a backyard wrestling name, or were you just like the GM?
I don't honestly remember because like this was like 5th grade.
Okay.
I remember though, we didn't have a ladder match. We had a treetop title match where we built the ring under a tree and then we hung it from like a tree branch that like came out.
Yeah.
And we had to like on the tree branch, Ultimate X style, and try to get the belt. And then one of my friends got hurt, and my mom told us to stop playing with the tree, so we stopped.
I mean, that'll do it. That'll do it. Did you do sports as a kid knowing that you want to be a pro wrestler, or was like the dream to go to like the NFL?
It was definitely like go to the NFL for a little bit because like once I got older, like I loved wrestling. But like my home, like my family doctor, he was the director of like the youth football league. Okay. So as big as I am, by the time I'm like getting into wrestling, I'm talking to him about, oh, I want to be a wrestler when I grow up. He's like, football makes more sense. You can go to college with football. So one of those things where, and then like he'd talk to my parents, he'd say that stuff around my parents. My parents were like, yeah, that is true. Plus, how are you going to, because like at the time, we didn't know anything about like training schools. So it's like,
yeah,
they were just like, how do you even become a wrestler? Like you don't even know how to do that. So like football makes more sense. You know what I mean? My dad wouldn't take me to wrestling shows, but he showed up to every like football or basketball game I had. You know what I mean? Like I had to, like my dad like 2 local wrestling shows, but like even like anything that was televised, any other like company or name that you would know, never took me to one of them. And like he'd like show up to the indie shows with like a newspaper and just sit there for 3 hours reading the newspaper. Just not interested at all. So like yeah, I'm like in the second row screaming my head off.
Yeah.
And had some school like looks and stuff like that. Went on recruiting trips to schools. And then didn't get my grades up in time. And so went to go to a junior college. There was no junior colleges in Indiana that had a football program. So I went to Vincent University for a little bit, about 3 months, and then found out I was going to be a dad and dropped out and got a job. But like during that time through college, they had like a little like beginner, like they basically had like MMA club where they used like the wrestling facilities and they had heavy bags bring in. And then there was guys that like, they'd be like, say there was 10 guys in the school that actually fought. The guys that were like either thinking about fighting seriously or did fight seriously would just stay after and train. So like there would be like an hour and a half little like easy session and then stay for hours and hours after that. So since I'd wrestled in high school, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I could keep in shape doing this. So that's where I started picking that up. I dropped out of college and got a job. My friend, a couple of my friends had started fighting back home. So he was like, hey, come to this gym. This is where we're training. And so I did that with him. I love like rolling around with people, but I never thought that like, I'd have to cut a bunch of weight to fight because I was still walking around at like 330, 340 pounds. And, fight is, if I'm fighting a heavyweight, that's 265, so that's a big cut.
Oh, that's a big cut.
Yeah. I met a friend at work. We found out that we were both wrestling fans. We talked jokingly about training, and then like I was like, dude, let's for real do it. And so like we started like Googling for like a week, like trying to figure out the best places, and like we went to the only place within an hour of us, a little small place in Indianapolis, and then like we went there for like they did a show every Friday night. We went there, asked around about who to ask, and then we waited till after the show and asked him. He said, show up on Sunday, we have training. First training session is basically a tryout, and if you can't make it through, we're not going to waste our time on you. So we paid for the first like training session. We were good enough. We started picking stuff up kind of rather quickly, and he didn't really have to show us anything more than like 2 or 3 times before we got it. I'm used to being coached from football, so it's like one of those things where in football, if my coach had to tell me 3 times I was running, so I'm not. Half the time he had to tell me twice I was running. I was 6 months in, and I was on cards with some of the top names in the indies. And so just getting to sit in the locker room and listen to the way they call their match, or, hey, can you watch my match and give me some critiques and tell me what you think about this? Or some that came regularly become like, not necessarily friends with, but like you become acquaintances with, and then you get to talk, you build a relationship, and then they're just anytime you're wrestling or watching your matches, just because they are interested and invested in you and you're a good guy, and they want to help you like get to that next level. So that like that and wrestling like 2 to 3 times a week for my first year and a half got me like, whereas there's like some guys in like really smaller like promotions, like especially in Indiana, they'll say like, oh, I've been wrestling for 10 years, but they might wrestle 20 times every year in those 10 years. It's just one of those things like where it's like I'm really excited and really happy that like all that work and all those things are starting to pay off.
So since you made your debut in MLW, you said that you want to be the world champion. Is there anyone besides the world champion, Jacob Fatu, that you have your eyes set on?
Definitely Hammerstone. I mean, he's number 1 in the rankings and has been for a while. So, and he's got a belt too. I'd love to take that. Champions make more money anyway. So, you know, it's one of those things where you got a belt, you get an extra check. So I'm always about to check. Give me Lio Rush too. Oh, that's a match I want. He got to be on this list too. So that's a match he wants too. So we gotta. That's one. ACH definitely. Those are definitely 2 guys that like when I was coming in to the business and I was starting, they were popping and I was watching them. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah. It's like I'd love to like test myself against those guys that like I was like, okay, these guys are it. When I was training, I was like, I want to be like that. They're young and still like killing it in ways that like nobody else is doing right now. I want to be like on that way. I want to be that influential. I want to be that good.
Where can all the MLW fans find you on social media if they don't follow you already?
Twitter and Instagram at Calvin Tankman, Facebook.com/Calvin Tankman1. Hit up MLW shop, get you some Calvin Tankman merch. Got some t-shirts with doublehell.com. They got some fire too. Go support both. And really, I think that's about it.
For every MLW fan that watches, make sure you follow Calvin Tankman on all social media. And thank you guys for watching the video. Really enjoyed. Thank you for coming on to the channel. I really appreciate it. I've been wanting to do this for, let's say like 4 months now, honestly. I've really been trying to figure out how I can like get in contact with you. I'm like, oh, let's just ask MLW, see what happens. Thank you guys for watching the video. Really enjoyed. Make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And we're out.
We going up like 1,000. I'm a flex just like a muscle man Malcolm. We going up like 1,000. I'm a flex just like a muscle man Malcolm. When it just like 1, 2, 3. If you like the channel, this will squeeze. If you like the channel, this will squeeze. If you like the channel, this will squeeze.